What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Clutch Talk, episode 15 today. Super excited for this video today. Going back to team previews, we're going to be doing Florida and Louisville today. Again, continuing our season previews, as many college football teams we can get through. Next video, we'll be going over top 10 wide receiver rooms, I think, in the country, who I think the top 10 will be for that. But until then, we're going to be getting to Florida, Louisville, and then next team preview will be Texas A&M and USC. So super excited for that. Again, if you're new to the channel and like the content, please subscribe to the channel. That would be great. And yeah, let's get started today with Florida and Louisville. I want to start with the Florida Gators. Florida had high expectations, or didn't have expectations last year. They were expecting Billy Napier to be fired last year. He ends up keeping his job. They go 8-5, had a pretty successful season, especially to end the year when they went with DJ Lagway instead of Graham Mertz. And he's back now. If you look at, he's back at quarterback. The numbers won't do it justice for what he did last year. Made some crazy plays and kept them in games they probably shouldn't have been in. But he is hurt right now. In training camp, they say that he's in a boot still working through some stuff. So that's something that needs to be taken into consideration, that he may not play the first 1 or 2 games of the season. But they do have a sophomore running back now, Jaden Ball, 670 yards, 7 touchdowns last year, one of the best freshmen in the college football last year. They're going to heavily rely on him to be successful. And then Jake Slaughter, I think the best center or second best center in college football, 98% of the snaps in the A-plus grade last year. Extremely experienced center, and he's going to be helping lead Jaden Ball and DJ Lagway to the end zone plenty of times. They only brought in one key transfer offensively, J. Michael. I'm just going to say J. Michael S. 315 yards last year from UCLA. He'll be the wide receiver 2, kind of replacing Chimere Dike. They also get Eugene Wilson back at receiver, who's a dog, but he struggled with injuries last year, so they're needing him to stay healthy this year in order for his offense to be successful. The offensive line is going to be one of the top 5 in college football. I think they're going to lean on this run game. Everyone's expecting it to be like an air-it-out offense with DJ Lagway. I don't expect it to be that. I think they're going to be a little bit more ground and pounding. Billy Napier, people also don't know, always loves to run the football, and I think no matter what, they're going to run the football. And I think Jaden Ball could have a 1,000-yard season. He was a breakout guy last year as a freshman. They expect big things out of him this year. They need a little bit more explosiveness, I think, in the offense. And I think that with DJ Lagway being the full-time starter now, that helps because he is very deep ball heavy. He loves to throw the deep ball. Jaden Ball, though, to me is, again, the sleeper. I think he's a sleeper in the SEC. I think he's a sleeper in the country. I think people are looking at DJ Lagway, and that's going to be the centerpiece of the team. I think Jaden Ball could easily be the centerpiece of this team, especially with DJ Lagway still injured, and we don't know if we're going to see him in the first game. We don't know if we're going to see him in game 2, game 3, like when we're going to see DJ Lagway. So I think Jaden Ball, that's when he's going to come in. I think he's going to step up in a big way. But again, DJ Lagway also, when he's healthy, is extremely, extremely special. You don't see many quarterbacks with his build, his arm, his physicality. There's not many like him. Now, he does have to stay healthy, but when he's healthy, I don't think there's many more talented in college football. So if we want to transition to the defense now, defensively, I think Tyreek Sapp on the edge is one of the best edge rushers in the SEC, 13 tackles for loss, 7 sacks. And defensive tackle Caleb Banks, I think, is one of the best D tackles in the SEC, 7 tackles for loss and 5 sacks last year. And Jordan Castell, one of the more underrated safeties in the SEC, 55 tackles and 9 pass deflections last year. They get another edge rusher from UMass and Kofi Asare, 6 tackles for loss and 3 sacks. And Michael Caraway from Southern Miss, another safety with 1 tackle for loss and a pass deflection. The defense was much improved from where it was last year. They got a new defensive coordinator, so I think there was an improved group last year from what was a really bad one when they had Anthony Richardson at quarterback. They struggled with penalties, but other than that, and they forced a lot of turnovers. There was a much more improved defense. And I think this defensive front 4 especially, I think it's going to be one of the top end of the SEC. Top 3. I really believe that. I think they're going to be one of the top defensive groups in the SEC up front. The safety core is also one of the best, with Jordan Castell and Mike Carey, one of the more underrated safety groups that aren't going to get talked much about, but they're going to be really good there. And I think the defense, again, took a big jump last year. They're returning a lot, headlined by Tyreek Sapp. I expect this group to be very, very good this year, particularly at the line of scrimmage. And I think that's where Florida's going to excel as a team. Their offensive line's top 5 in the country. Their D-line's top 5 in the SEC, probably top 3. They're going to rely on that line of scrimmage. And again, that's how you win the SEC. I know it's changed in the past years. Still people think it's about airing it out, the spread offense, RPOs. It's still about being physical with line of scrimmage. Ohio State had a really good offensive line, defensive line last year. They won the national title. Georgia won the SEC. They had a really good defensive front. Texas was up there. They had a good offensive line and defensive front. They're going to get a defensive front this year, and they're projected to be at the top. You got to have lines of scrimmage still in the SEC and college football to win at a high level. I think Florida has that at one of the best levels in the country. If we want to look at the numbers from last year, offensively, nothing impressive. 69th passing, 67th rushing, 66th in total, 64th scoring, 43rd on sacks allowed, 92nd on third down, 53rd in the red zone. Defensively, nothing amazing, but they did improve. They were 43rd in scoring, 11th in sacks, and 9th in the red zone. There were improved areas of that defense, and I expect that to be the same. I think the sacks number could be the same. Again, this defensive front's not getting talked about a lot because everyone's focused on DJ Lagway, that offensive line, and Jane Ball. But I think this defensive line, I'm telling you, they're going to be sneaky good this year. So that wraps that up. If we want to get to these record predictions now, I think the worst they can do is 5-7. Now it's going to sound crazy because again, all I've done is hype up Florida, and act like they're going to go 10-2. That's not. I think 5-7 is actually possible, and I say this because their schedule is so brutal. They could lose at LSU. They could lose at Miami. They could lose to Texas, at Texas A&M. They could lose to Georgia. They could lose at Ole Miss, and they could lose to Tennessee. That really is 8, but I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'm gonna say 5-7. But I think it's the worst they can do, and I honestly think that would solely rely on DJ Lagway not being healthy. If he's not healthy, then I think 5-7 is gonna happen. I do, however, think he's gonna end up getting healthy at some point early on, where I don't think we have to worry about that. But as the worst case scenario for Florida is 5-7. I think the best, I'm gonna say 10-2. I think the best Florida can do this year is 10-2, and I think that would get them in the college football playoff easily. And that would be, I think, the only thing it'd be between these 4 games: at LSU, at Texas A&M, Texas at home, and Georgia and Jacksonville. Between those 4 games, you win 2 of them. And if they do that, I think it's the best they can do. And I think Jaden Ball will be an SEC Offensive Player of the Year potentially. I think DJ Lagway would be talked about as an All-American. I think that defensive line would be talked about highly. I think 10-2 is the best they can do, but I will say I think the most likely scenario is 8-4, just because of the schedule. Now, I think that'd be they lose at LSU, they lose to Texas, they lose at Texas A&M, and they lose at Ole Miss. Notice I didn't say Georgia, and that's because I believe that Florida's going to beat Georgia this year in Jacksonville. I think that it's been coming for a while now, these games being closer and closer. I think last year them being up on Georgia at halftime sent a message. I think with DJ Lagway this year being healthy, I think Jaden Ball is going to improve. I think Florida has better lines of scrimmage than Georgia does. I think they will beat Georgia in Jacksonville this year. That's one of my boldest takes of the year, but I'm standing by that. I think they will beat Georgia in Jacksonville this year. And however, I still think they'll go 8-4. But if they win the bowl game, that's 9-4 again. That's improvement. And then you can go in the next year knowing DJ Lagway is a junior, Jaden Ball is a junior, more experienced group. They're recruiting at a really high level right now, and I think that's a good year for the Florida Gators considering that schedule. And the schedule will be much easier next year than it is this year. This is kind of like the last year of them having that gauntlet of a schedule. But I think they can go 8-4 in it because I think Florida's going to be really talented this year, and they're going to be. I think all those losses will be competitive, so I don't see them getting blown out in any game this year. So 8-4. That's why I'm going on that. Moving on. We're at the halfway point of the video. If you like the video, subscribe. And we're going to transition to the Louisville Cardinals. Really good year last year for Louisville under Jeff Brom, and I think they could potentially be just as good as they were this past year. They got a new quarterback, obviously, but Jeff Brom's one of the best play callers in college football. He made Tyler Shough look good. I think he can make anyone look good. If we want to look at the key returners, running back Isaac Brown's not getting talked about a lot within national media, but he had 1,100 yards last year on 7 yards a carry and 11 touchdowns. I expect big things from him. Chris Bell is a wide receiver 1 last year, wide receiver 1 this year, 737 yards, 4 touchdowns, and then Pete Nigra, 98% of the snaps, an A- grade, really good up front. The key transfer obviously headlined by quarterback Miller Moss, 18 touchdowns, 9 interceptions at USC last year. Not amazing. But I think again, he made Tyler Shough turn him into a second-round pick. I think Jeff Braun would turn Miller Moss into that. And I could see Miller Moss being like how Kyle McCord was last year, and the fact that, you were in a hostile situation at USC, get a fresh start at ACC school like Louisville, and light it up. Wide receiver Bobby Golden, wide receiver Trayshawn Henry are the two wide receiver transfers they brought in as well to boost that receiver room. The running back room, though, is obviously very good, headlined by Isaac Brown, and they were really good yards per carry last year. Extremely good, actually. Averaged about 5.7 yards a rush. They could hit that number again this year. They're returning a good amount of offensive line pieces. And again, I think this will be the Miller Moss resurgence at Louisville. I think you're going to see a different kind of quarterback than he was at USC. I think USC was too much of a pressure situation for someone like him. And I think he's going to be really, really good at Louisville. And again, it'll be very much like how Kyle McCord was at Syracuse last year. I trust Jeff Braun with any quarterback, but particularly that of a Miller Moss. And again, experienced offensive line. I think this offense is going to be very, very good. It was very good last year. I expect it to be very good this year. And I think it'll be headlined by Miller Moss. And I think Isaac Brown is going to lead the ACC in rushing this year. Again, he's not getting talked about in a lot of national media, and that's fair. Because, no one really wants to talk about Louisville, with all due respect. But I think he's going to have a monster year this year. I think Louisville's offense will have a monster year this year. This one I want to talk about, though, the defense. Returning-wise, they get Stanquan Clark back, 8 tackles for loss, a sack, and 2 interceptions. Antonio Watts, 7 tackles for loss, 3 pass deflections. And defensive lineman Jordan Gerard, we have 4 tackles for loss and 3 sacks. Transfer-wise, linebacker Clev Lubin had 11 tackles for loss and 10 sacks from Central Connecticut. And then they get cornerback Jabari Mack, 11 pass deflections, 2 interceptions from Jacksonville State. And safety JoJo Evans, who had 7 pass deflections, 2 interceptions from FIU. They brought in a lot of transfers defensively, and they needed to because it was not a very good group last year, particularly in the secondary. And it's a brand new secondary, extremely brand new secondary. 8 transfers in that secondary, completely new, rehauled to repair what the defense was last year. 17 defensive transfers. That is 3rd in college football. So they completely revamped that group as well to go along with the experience that they had last year that ended up playing good. It's a group that should improve, though. There's no reason Louisville should be giving up 24 points a game. But the talent they brought in from the portal and talent that's returning, I expect it to be a much, much improved group in the year 2025. If we want to look at the numbers from last year, offensively, again, like I said, it was extremely good. 26 passing, 33rd rushing, 13th in total, 9th in scoring. 17th sacks allowed, 71st on 3rd down, 87th in red zone. Defensively, though, like I said, horrendous. 100th passing defense, 40th rushing defense, 64th in total, 56th in scoring, 30th in sacks, 36th on 3rd down, 67th in the red zone. Those have to go up, and I think they will. I trust Jeff Braun as a coach. He made Purdue a consistent Big Ten contender. I think people forget about that. He had Purdue in the Big Ten championship game numerous times as a coach there. He beat Ohio State when they had Urban Meyer. People forget how good of a coach I think Jeff Braun is. I think he's one of the most underrated coaches in college football, one of the most underrated offensive minds in college football, and quarterback whisperers. He's got consistently good quarterback play. I think Miller Moss could have a monster year. I've said it a lot on this episode. I'm going to keep saying it. He's going to have a monster year. This offense can be really good. I think Louisville's going to be really good. So we get to the worst, best, and most likely. I say the worst is 6-6. And this is like disastrous scenario where Miller Moss didn't get better than he was at USC. Let's say Lincoln Riley really is a quarterback whisperer and Miller Moss gets worse. Let's say the receivers transfers don't work out, so the defense doesn't get better. I can see him losing at Pitt, Miami, at Virginia Tech, Clemson, at SMU, and like Kentucky. That'd be 6-6. I don't think that'll happen, though. I really don't believe that. There's hardly any chance of that happening. That's just like a disaster scenario. The best, though, I will say is going to be 11-1. And I think, that's you lose to either at Miami or you lose to Clemson at home on a Friday night. I think that's the best scenario, and that would get them in the playoff because I think you could lose to Clemson in the SEC title game, but if you beat them once, you lose to them once, I think they still get in the playoff. But I don't think that's very likely either. I think the most likely is 9-3. Now, again, this is not like Florida where you expect the losses to be what you look at the schedule like, oh, that's a loss. I think they lose at Pitt, they lose at Miami, and they lose at SMU. Notice I didn't say Clemson. I think, here's my other bold prediction. I think they will beat Clemson on Friday night at home. I think Louisville's going to beat Clemson Friday night at home. There's something about it, it's Friday in November, late in the year. It's going to be cold, night game. Everyone's going to be watching. I think Clemson's going to be undefeated up to that point in the season for that game. And I think, strange things happen for Jeff Brom against big teams. Strange things happen for Louisville since he's gotten there at night against big teams. They beat Clemson last year. I think they beat Clemson this year. I think Miller Moss will have a monster game that game. I think Louisville will beat Clemson. I think it'll be much closer than it was last time. Louisville kind of manhandled Clemson the first time. I don't think it'll be that case this time around, but I do think Louisville will win the game. But I still think they'll go 9-3. I think they will win the bowl game. I think they'll have a 10-win year under Jeff Brom. I think this Louisville resurgence has been fun to watch. And Jeff Brom, like I said, one of the most underrated coaches in college football. I expect big things out of this team this year. And yes, that's what I got for Louisville going 9-3. With that being said, that'll wrap up our video. Again, next team preview, instead of USC Texas A&M, I'm going to do Baylor and Texas A&M, and then I'll do USC and some other team, maybe Ole Miss. I think that'll be a good fit, USC, Ole Miss. Season previews, and again, my top 10 wide receiver room video will be coming soon. Next position group, I may do top 10 games, actually, like top 10 games of the season that I think will be the top 10 games. I'm telling you, I think some of them are in week 1. We're in the month of August now, so we're officially in the month of college football, which is crazy to think about. Week 1, though, I'm telling you, has playoff implication games. That's Texas, Ohio State. That's LSU, Clemson. I think Auburn, Baylor that Friday night's a sneaky big-time game because I think it's big for both programs. I think if Baylor wins that game, they're on a very good track to have a good year to where they could be in the Big 12 title game just based on momentum. I think they could have the record to get in the playoff because I think that's how high I'm on Baylor this year. I think if Auburn wins that game, you're looking at a potentially 8-4 season, but if they lose that game, momentum could fall very fast for Auburn, and then Hugh Freeze may be out of a job. So that has big implications. I think Tennessee-Syracuse is a sneaky, interesting game at noon because Fran Brown and Syracuse had such a big year last year. And, you got a new quarterback at Tennessee. We don't know who it is yet. Based out of fall camp, we think it'll be Joey Aguilar, but no one really knows. But Tennessee's a 14.5-point favorite, and it's a sneaky game where Syracuse sneak up with Steve Angeli or Chris Collins, whoever the quarterback is at Syracuse, and win that game. And then that Notre Dame-Miami game, Catholics versus Convicts at Sunday night, big-time game. And also, during the day that Sunday at 3 o'clock, you got Virginia Tech, South Carolina. Spread's only 8.5 on that game. That could get interesting. And then that Monday night, you got TCU going into North Carolina to face Bill Belichick. Sonny Dykes versus Bill Belichick in North Carolina. So crazy, crazy games. Week 1. Super excited for the season. Again, we're in the month of college football now, so we're getting closer to Saturday mornings, watching College Game Day, Pat McAfee rip his shirt off, Nick Saban, talk about college football, and then we get to sit and watch games all day. So I'm super excited about that, super excited for these more videos coming up. Thank y'all for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. See ya.